The first time she caught me looking at the dress, she did not laugh, did not gasp, did not even pretend to be shocked. She just leaned against the bedroom door, folded her arms, and said, "If you're going to keep staring at it like it holds the answer to your whole life, at least be honest about why." I froze so hard I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. That dress was hers. Soft pink, knee-length, light enough to move when the fan turned. I had told myself I was only admiring the fabric, only curious about the cut, only wondering why something so simple could make my chest ache the way it did. But she looked at me like she could see through every lie I had built over the years, right down to the one I told myself every morning. I tried to shrug it off. I even laughed, a weak, useless laugh. "It's nothing." She walked to the wardrobe, took the hanger, and held the dress between us. Then put it on.
My throat went dry.
"What?" "You heard me." Her voice was calm, but there was a challenge in it, sharp and dangerous and weirdly kind at the same time. "If it means nothing, you won't care. If it means something, stop insulting both of us by pretending it doesn't." I should have walked away. I should have made a joke, changed the subject, done literally anything except what I did next. I took the dress from her hands. Even now, I can still remember how my fingers trembled against the fabric. That was the moment everything began, though I didn't know it yet. I thought I was stepping into a private fantasy I had hidden my whole life. I had no idea I was stepping into a test, a trial, a complete dismantling of the person I thought I was. Because when I came out wearing that dress, awkward, red-faced, unable to meet her eyes, she looked me up and down and said the one thing I never expected.
"No."
"Take it off." I stared at her like she had slapped me. I felt stupid immediately, more exposed than if I had been standing there naked. "I knew it," I muttered. This was a mistake. But she shook her head. "No, the mistake is thinking clothes alone will transform you. If you want this, really want it, you have to prove it. Not to me, to yourself." That sentence stayed with me longer than any compliment ever could. At the time, I hated it. I wanted her to tell me I looked beautiful. I wanted instant acceptance, instant validation, some magical permission to become the version of myself I had been secretly building in daydreams since I was a teenager. I wanted softness without effort, grace without practice, confidence without exposure. Instead, she crossed her arms again and said, "You don't get to borrow femininity like a costume and call it truth after 5 minutes. If you want me to help you, you will do this properly." Properly, I repeated. Posture, skincare, walking, choosing clothes that fit your body instead of your fantasy, learning what actually suits you, learning why you want it, learning how to carry yourself without apology. She stepped closer, her eyes locked on mine. "If you want to become her, you have to respect her." I didn't know why those words hit me so hard, but they did. Maybe because for years I had loved the surface of it while fearing the depth. Maybe because I had been treating my own desire like a guilty secret instead of a serious part of myself. Maybe because she was the first person who didn't reduce me to a joke. So I nodded. That was the first night of my education. She did not start with lipstick or wigs or dresses. She started with honesty. She sat me down on the edge of the bed and asked me when I first knew. I told her about being 12 years old and pausing too long in front of store windows. About envying softness. About wanting the freedom of beauty, but feeling trapped by every expectation wrapped around masculinity. About the first time I touched a silky blouse in a shop and felt electricity shoot through me. About the years I spent deleting browser histories and making promises to myself that never lasted more than a week. She listened without interrupting. That alone nearly broke me. You have to understand, people think the hardest part of cross-dressing is putting on the clothes. It isn't. The hardest part is allowing the truth to sit in the open air without rushing to hide it again. The hardest part is hearing your own desire spoken aloud and realizing it doesn't sound evil, ridiculous, or broken. It just sounds lonely. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Good. Now we work." The next few days were brutal in a way I didn't expect. She stripped all fantasy out of it. She made me stand straight against the wall for 10 minutes at a time, so I could feel how tense and defensive my body naturally was. She pointed out how I moved from my shoulders instead of my hips, how I sat like I was trying to occupy as much space as possible, how my hands were always clenched. She told me femininity was not weakness and softness was not passivity. Relaxation takes courage, she said. Most men are terrified of being seen at ease. I hated how right she was. Then came skincare. I thought she was joking when she lined up cleansers, moisturizers, serums, and sunscreen like it was some sacred ritual, but by day 3 I started to understand. It wasn't vanity. It was attention. Touching my own face gently, instead of attacking it. Looking in the mirror, without disgust. Learning patience. Learning that transformation is built from routines nobody sees. She taught me to shave properly, to reduce irritation, to take my time. She taught me that makeup does not hide you. Bad makeup hides you. Good makeup reveals intention. Your face isn't a mask, she told me. It's a conversation. By the end of the first week, I had not worn the dress again. And yet I was more committed than ever. That was the second turning point, though I didn't recognize it then. I had come to her thinking this was about appearance. She was showing me it was really about discipline, identity, and self-respect. She was making me earn every inch of confidence instead of handing me a cheap fantasy. Then she took me shopping. Not online. Not secretly. A real store. I almost refused. Absolutely not. I said the second we pulled into the parking lot. My palms were sweating so badly, I could barely open the car door. I can't do this. She turned off the engine and looked at me. Then you don't want it enough. That's not fair. No, she said softly. What's not fair is expecting your future self to exist if your present self never risks anything for her. I swear those words hit harder than a slap. I wanted to argue, but she had learned something about me already. Challenge me the right way, and I will either run or rise. That day, I rose. We went in together. I kept my head down at first, convinced everyone could hear my thoughts. Every perfume bottle, every rack of skirts, every mannequin in a fitted blouse felt dangerously bright, as if I had stepped into a world that could immediately tell I did not belong there. But she moved like nothing was unusual.
Calm.
Natural. Unbothered. And slowly, I copied her pace. That was lesson 3. People take cues from your energy. If you move like you are doing something shameful, the whole world feels like a witness. If you move like you belong, most people barely notice. She did not let me buy the first things I wanted. That hurt my feelings more than I'd like to admit. I reached for tight dresses, tiny waists, dramatic cuts, things that looked stunning on mannequins and would have looked absurd on my frame. She stopped me every time.
No.
Why? Wrong shape.
No.
Why? Wrong color.
No.
Why? Because you're dressing for a fantasy version of womanhood instead of your actual body. I got defensive. So now I'm doing it wrong too? Yes, she said, without any cruelty. And that's fine. Everybody starts by doing it wrong. That was the first practical truth that changed everything for me. Fit matters more than fantasy. The clothes that flatter you are not always the ones that excite you on the hanger. Learning your body shape is an act of liberation. I had spent years imagining that if I just bought something sexy enough, I'd instantly look the way I dreamed. But she showed me how structure works, how necklines change proportion, how waist placement changes silhouette, how fabrics either cling or forgive, how the right cardigan can soften broad shoulders better than any desperate trick. When I finally tried on an outfit she chose, simple black skirt, cream blouse, light belt, modest heels, I almost didn't recognize myself. Not because I looked like a different person, because for the first time, I looked like a possible person. I stepped out of the fitting room expecting her usual tough expression, but her face changed. Not into surprise. Into approval. There, she said quietly. Now I can see her. I nearly cried right there between fluorescent lights and discounted handbags. But she was not done. Back at home, she set another rule. No full dressing until you can walk in those heels without looking like you're escaping a fire. I laughed despite myself. You really don't let me enjoy anything easily, do you? She smiled for the first time since all this started. I want you to enjoy it properly. So, every night I practiced. Short steps. Knees relaxed. Weight placed carefully. Heel to toe. Hips natural, not exaggerated. Chin level. Arms loose. She corrected me again and again until my legs ached and my ego bruised. The truth is, a lot of people who are curious about cross-dressing focus on the visible pieces and ignore movement. But movement is what sells confidence. Clothes can be bought. Presence has to be built. A week later, she added makeup. And that was where my patience truly got tested. I thought makeup was magic. A little foundation, a little lipstick, done. She nearly laughed me out of the chair. Skin prep first. Always, 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 she said. Moisturized skin changes everything. Blend down the neck. Choose undertones correctly. Never cake product in the hope of hiding structure. Contour with restraint. Brows frame expression more than people realize. Mascara can feminize the eye faster than heavy shadow. Lip color should match mood, skin tone, and the story you want her face to tell. I listened to every word like my life depended on it, because in that moment it felt like it did. The fourth turning point came the night she wiped half my makeup off. I had spent almost an hour on it. I thought I looked amazing. Dramatic eyes, bold lips, heavy contour, enough product to survive a storm. I was proud, genuinely proud. Then she studied my face, reached for a cotton pad, and removed almost everything. I was furious. What are you doing? Saving you. You said I was improving. You are. She tossed the used cotton pad aside and turned me back toward the mirror. And now you need to learn the difference between transformation and disguise. I looked again. She was right. With less makeup, I looked softer, fresher, more believable, more elegant. I didn't look hidden anymore. I looked revealed. That lesson stayed with me. The urge to overdo often comes from fear. If you're scared your femininity won't be seen, you pile on proof. But confidence is often quieter than insecurity. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop trying so hard to erase every trace of yourself and instead learn harmony. By then, I had started thinking about her, even when we weren't together. Not just because she was helping me,
Because she saw me.
Do you know how intimate it feels when someone watches you become honest? When someone notices the way your whole breathing pattern changes the second you stop pretending? When someone touches your jaw with 2 fingers and says, "Relax, you don't have to fight your own face"? I was in trouble long before I admitted it. Then came the 5th turning point, and it nearly destroyed everything. She invited me over one Friday evening and laid out an outfit on the bed. Soft blue dress, nude tights, simple jewelry, low heels, light cardigan. Elegant. Understated. Beautiful. I smiled like an idiot. So tonight's the night? Yes, she said. Tonight, you prove yourself. I thought she meant a longer mirror session. Maybe photos. Maybe walking practice in the apartment. I was wrong. She handed me a small purse. Then she held up her car keys. You're going outside. My whole body went cold.
No.
You are.
No.
You said you wanted this. I do, but not like that. There is no like that, she said. There is only the moment your fear stops running your life. I panicked. I'm not romanticizing this. I was genuinely shaking. My brain flooded with every nightmare scenario at once. People staring, laughing, filming, recognizing me, following me, exposing me, reducing me to some viral joke. The old shame I thought I had begun to outgrow came roaring back like it had only been waiting in the dark.
She saw it happen.
And instead of pushing harder, she sat beside me. That shocked me more than the challenge. Her voice softened. Listen to me. You do not have to be reckless to be brave. We're not walking through a crowded mall. We're driving to a quiet cafe 20 minutes away. You'll go in, order a drink, say thank you, walk out. That's it. I can't. You can. I'll look ridiculous. Maybe to someone. Maybe not. That is not the point. Then what is? She held my gaze until I couldn't look away. The point is that if your sense of self collapses the second a stranger might see it, then you still built it on shame. That line almost made me cry. I went. The drive there felt longer than any journey I've ever taken. Every red light felt like an invitation to turn back. Every passing car made me wonder if the driver could somehow see through the windows and read the panic written all over my face. But when we parked, she squeezed my hand once and said, "Short steps.
Breathe.
Shoulders down. You belong where your feet are." I repeated those words in my head the whole walk to the entrance. Inside, no one screamed. No one pointed. No one cared. The cashier smiled and asked what I wanted. And because my voice still carried more anxiety than polish, it cracked halfway through my order. I wanted to die. But the cashier just nodded, handed me the receipt, and said, "It'll be ready in a minute." That was it. That tiny, ordinary moment changed me more than any glamorous fantasy ever could. The world did not end. I did not combust. I was not struck down by judgment. I stood there in a dress, feeling my pulse in my throat, waiting for an iced latte like any other person on earth. When we got back to the car, I started laughing, not because it was funny, because I had been so afraid of surviving a thing that turned out to be survivable. She smiled at me in the dark car park, and for one dangerous second, I wanted to kiss her. I didn't. Instead, I whispered, "Thank you." That should have been a triumph. It should have been the moment the story turned easy. But real stories never do that. A few days later, I made the worst mistake of my life. I tried to do it alone too fast. I had tasted confidence, and like a fool, I mistook one successful step for complete readiness. So I dressed by myself one afternoon, took extra time with my makeup, picked an outfit I thought made me look amazing, and went to a larger shopping area without telling her. I wanted to surprise her. I wanted to prove I didn't need supervision anymore. I wanted to feel powerful. Instead, I got clocked almost immediately by a group of boys outside a phone store. It wasn't subtle. One of them laughed and muttered something to the others. Another looked me right in the face and said, "Nice try." It should not have hurt as much as it did. But humiliation does not follow logic. It goes straight for old wounds and pushes. I left so fast I nearly twisted my ankle. By the time I got home, my mascara had bled at the corners from the tears I refused to admit I'd been crying. When she saw me that evening, she knew instantly. What happened? Nothing. She waited. I broke. I told her everything. The boys. The laughter. The stupid pride that sent me out too soon. The way one careless comment had shattered hours of effort. The way I suddenly felt foolish for believing I could ever become someone beautiful instead of someone mockable. She listened. Then she said something that changed the entire direction of my journey. "You think passing is the same thing as worth?" I frowned. "What?" "You think if nobody notices, you win. And if somebody notices, you lose. That's not confidence. That's dependence on approval." Her words stung because they were true. She came closer and gently cleaned the smudged makeup beneath my eyes. "Do you want to improve your presentation? Good. Learn.
Practice.
Study. Refine. But never tie your value to the ignorance or cruelty of strangers. Some people notice because they are observant. Some notice because they are insecure. Some don't notice anything at all. None of them get to decide whether what you felt in that cafe was real." That was the sixth turning point. Until then, I thought the goal was perfection.
She taught me the goal was peace.
From that day, my practice changed. I still learned techniques. In fact, I became more serious. I studied clothing balance, posture, grooming, voice control, hand placement, and lighting. I learned that natural light exposes bad blending better than indoor mirrors. I learned that photographs are cruel in ways mirrors are not, and useful precisely because of that. I learned that the right bra shape changes a whole outfit, that jewelry can either elevate or cheapen a look, that nails matter even when nobody consciously notices them. I learned that perfume should whisper, not shout. I learned that confidence is visible before beauty is. But I also started asking harder questions. Who was I doing this for? Was I chasing a thrill, an image, a private escape, or a genuine expression of self? Was this a version of me, a role I loved inhabiting, a side of my identity starved for oxygen? Did it need a name? Did it need a future? Did it need to be seen by more than one person? She never answered those questions for me. She just refused to let me avoid them. The seventh turning point arrived with a small box. She handed it to me one evening after practice. Inside was a delicate silver necklace. Nothing flashy, just elegant enough to feel personal. I looked up. What's this for? For the first day you stopped looking at yourself like an intruder. That nearly wrecked me.
I didn't wear it that night.
I didn't feel I had earned it, but I kept the box. Somewhere in the middle of all this, I realized I was falling in love with her. Really falling. Not fantasy. Not gratitude dressed up as romance.
Love.
The slow kind built from correction, honesty, patience, and the terrifying relief of being known. The problem was, I had no idea whether she felt anything similar. Sometimes her gaze lingered too long. Sometimes her fingers paused at the back of my neck while adjusting a clasp. Sometimes her tone softened in ways that made my chest tighten. But she never crossed the line, never blurred the teacher-student rhythm we had fallen into, never gave me a clear answer. Then one night she did something even worse. She introduced me to someone else. Her friend Maya. Maya was everything I feared and admired at once. Elegant, effortlessly perceptive, with a kind of confident femininity that made every room reorganize around her. When I arrived, already dressed and nervous, I thought maybe this was another lesson. Maybe she wanted a second opinion. Maybe she wanted me to learn from someone with better style. What I did not expect was the way Maya smiled at me and said, "So, you're the one she won't stop talking about." I almost stopped breathing. I looked at her. She looked away. Interesting. Over dinner, Maya asked me questions that were sharper than anything I'd heard before. Not cruel.
Precise.
What parts of dressing made me feel most like myself? Which habits came from genuine preference, and which came from trying to imitate a stereotype? Did I feel more free in feminine presentation or more beautiful? Was I pursuing softness, admiration, escape, or identity? If I were alone on an island with no mirrors and no audience, would I still want this? That last question hit me like a hammer, because the answer was yes. Yes, I would. I would still want the fabric, the ritual, the posture, the softness, the shift in energy, the relief. I would still want the version of myself that emerged when I stopped armoring every emotion. Maya smiled as if she had been waiting for that answer. Later, when she stepped out to take a call, I turned to the woman who had started all this. "You planned this?" "Of course I did." "Why?" "Because I needed to know whether you were serious." I blinked. "After everything, you still weren't sure?" She held my gaze. "I knew you were curious. I knew you were brave enough to try. I wasn't sure whether you were willing to understand yourself, or if you just wanted me to hand you a fantasy." That was the eighth turning point. I realized then she had never been guarding herself from me. She had been guarding me from my own shallowness. And somehow that made me love her more. A week later, she invited me to a private house gathering.
Small.
Trusted people only, she said. No phones, no random guests, no pressure. Just a few friends who already knew enough not to turn someone else's vulnerability into entertainment. I almost said no, but something in me had changed by then. I was tired of only existing at the edges of my own life. So I said yes. Getting ready that night felt different. Less frantic. Less desperate. I took my time. Prepped my skin. Chose an outfit that flattered me instead of shouting for attention. Did my makeup with a lighter hand. Styled the wig with softness instead of theatricality. Added the silver necklace. When I looked in the mirror, I finally understood why she had given it to me. I didn't look like an intruder anymore. I looked like someone arriving. At the gathering, nobody mocked me. Nobody treated me like a circus act. One woman complimented my earrings. A guy in a velvet jacket asked where I bought my heels because his boyfriend would love them.
Someone offered me wine.
Someone else asked how long I'd been exploring my feminine side. Exploring my feminine side. Not pretending. Not performing. Not "what's your deal?" Just a normal, respectful question. I answered honestly. And for the first time, honesty felt lighter than concealment. That should have been the happiest night of a story. Instead, It became the ninth turning point because of what happened near midnight. I found her alone on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. I joined her, nerves buzzing beneath my skin for a completely different reason now.
You were right, I said.
She smiled faintly. About all of it. The work, the patience, the difference between fantasy and truth. I swallowed hard. And there's something else I need to say.
She turned toward me.
I thought this was the moment. I really did. So I told her. I told her what she had become to me. How no one had ever made me feel more seen. How every lesson had somehow stripped away more than makeup mistakes and bad posture. How I had started this wanting permission and ended up discovering courage. How somewhere in the middle of being remade, I had fallen for the person holding the mirror. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, the silence hurt. Then she said, softly, I know. Not I feel the same. Not I don't. Just those two words. I felt the ground shift under me. That's it. She closed her eyes for a second, then opened them.
No.
That's not it. But if I answer you right now, I'll be answering from a place that might confuse gratitude, intimacy, responsibility, and desire. And you deserve better than that. I wanted to be noble enough to appreciate that. I wasn't. I felt rejected. Not clearly, not cruelly, but enough to wound. Enough that I left early. Enough that I didn't answer her messages the next day. Enough that all the old voices came back whispering that of course this had happened. Of course I had mistaken kindness for love. Of course I had ruined the one safe thing I had. 3 days passed. Then she showed up at my door. No warning. No hesitation. Just there. You don't get to disappear because honesty got uncomfortable, she said the second I opened it. I laughed bitterly. That's rich coming from you. Invite me in. I did. We stood in my living room, surrounded by all the visible evidence of what I had become. Skincare on the shelf, heels near the chair, a wig stand on the desk, a blouse draped over the sofa. A life no longer hidden. She looked around and then back at me. Do you know why I didn't answer you on the balcony? Because you didn't want to hurt me. No, she stepped closer. Because I was already in too deep. I forgot how to breathe. She continued before I could speak. From the first night, I knew you were fragile in this. Not weak. Fragile. And I refused to make myself your reward. I refused to let romance become the thing that validated your transformation. If this was going to become real between us, I needed to know you would keep becoming yourself even if I said no. That was the 10th turning point, and maybe the most important one in the whole story. Because she was right. If she had kissed me at the beginning, I might have tied my entire journey to her desire. I might have mistaken being loved for being known. I might have built my courage around being chosen instead of around choosing myself. She reached into her bag and pulled out that first pink dress. I kept this, she said. Do you know why? I shook my head. Because I wanted to wait until the day you could wear it without hiding inside it. She held it out to me. My hands shook again as I took it, but not from shame this time. From memory. From recognition. From the unbelievable weight of how far I had come. Put it on, she whispered.
So I did.
When I came back, she didn't tell me to take it off. She just looked at me, long and steady, and said, now you're ready. No compliment in my life has ever mattered more. She walked up to me, adjusted one strap with tender fingers, and for the first time since this began, she kissed me.
Softly. Slowly.
Like she had been holding it back for months. I wish I could tell you the rest became simple after that, but love does not erase complexity, and identity does not stop evolving because someone finally says yes. In some ways, the real story started there. We began spending more time together not just as mentor and student, not just as secret keepers, but as two people trying to build something honest. And honesty, I learned, becomes even more demanding once love enters the room. She asked me whether I wanted a feminine name. No one had asked me that before. I spent 2 days thinking about it. A name is a dangerous thing. Intimate. Defining. It can feel like a costume label or a key, depending on why you choose it. I did not want something that sounded glamorous, but empty. I wanted something that felt like the emotional truth of who I became when I softened. Eventually, I chose Elena. The 11th turning point came the first time she called me that in public. Not loudly. Not theatrically. We were at another cafe, another careful outing, and the barista asked whose order was whose. She picked up the first cup, handed me the second, and said, "This one's yours, Elena." That one word ran through me like light. I looked at her, and she smiled as if she knew exactly how profound a thing she had done. A chosen name is not just a sound. It's recognition made audible. After that, my relationship with dressing changed again. I stopped measuring success only in how convincing I looked. I started paying more attention to how aligned I felt. Some days that meant a full outfit, hair, makeup, jewelry, everything. Some days it meant only skincare, a soft top, painted nails, and a posture that reminded me I did not need witnesses to be real. Some days it meant no visible expression at all, just the inner permission to remain connected to that part of myself without shame. This matters more than people realize. Crossdressing does not have to be all or nothing to be meaningful. You do not have to earn legitimacy through extreme performance. Some people love complete transformation. Some love subtle blending. Some explore occasionally. Some live deeply in it. Some discover it opens questions about gender. Some discover it doesn't. None of those paths are automatically more true than the others. What matters is whether you are listening to yourself more honestly than you did yesterday. Of course, life still found ways to test me. One afternoon, months into all this, my older brother showed up at my apartment unannounced. And in my rush to open the door, I forgot one tiny detail. My nails were painted. Not bright red. Not impossible to explain. Just glossy nude with a soft shine. Still, the second he noticed, I felt that old cold fear climb my spine. He stared at my hand, then at me, then back at my hand. I braced for impact. "What's with the nails?" he asked. Time slowed. I could have lied. I almost did. Some stupid excuse about a dare, some half-joke, some pathetic retreat back into the safe little prison I had been escaping for months. Instead, I heard her voice in my head. "If your sense of self collapses the second a stranger might see it, then you still built it on shame." So I took a breath and said, "I like them." He frowned. "You serious?" "Yes." Silence. This was the 12th turning point because it was the moment I realized I no longer needed a perfect environment to tell the truth. He looked confused, maybe uncomfortable, maybe trying to recalculate who he thought I was. Then, unexpectedly, he shrugged. "Huh," he said. "Wouldn't work for me." And that was it. Not a hug. Not a speech. Not instant understanding. Just the world refusing to end again. After he left, I sat on the sofa and laughed until tears came. Not because his reaction was ideal, but because I had survived another gate. Another threshold. Another moment that once would have owned me. When I told her later, she smiled and said, "See, the monsters in our heads usually have worse dialogue than real people." I loved that. I still do. Over time, my skills improved in ways that would have seemed impossible at the beginning. My walk became smoother. My makeup became lighter and better. My clothing choices became more intentional. I understood line, proportion, texture, and occasion. I learned how to sit elegantly without performing fragility, how to move my hands naturally, how to speak more softly without forcing a fake voice, how to carry a purse without clutching it like contraband, how to cross my legs in a way that felt comfortable rather than imitated, how to use shapewear when I wanted structure and reject it when I wanted ease, how to choose wigs that suited my face instead of chasing impossible glamour, how to use small details, earrings, a watch, a scarf, nude polish, a clean hemline, to make a look feel complete. But the deeper lessons mattered more. Never dress to punish yourself with comparison. Never buy clothes for the body you wish you had while hating the body you have. Never mistake discomfort for failure. Sometimes discomfort is simply growth without applause. Never let internet perfection ruin private joy. Filters and angles lie more smoothly than shame does. Take photos, yes, but also live in the moment.
Move, sit, eat, Laugh.
An outfit that only works standing still in one mirror is not confidence, it's choreography. And above all, if you are exploring this side of yourself, treat it with dignity. Clean your space. Store your things with care. Build routines.
Learn. Practice.
Be patient. What you respect tends to stop feeling like a guilty habit and start feeling like a meaningful part of your life. One rainy evening, almost a year after that first impossible night, she and I stood in front of the same wardrobe where she had first caught me staring at the pink dress. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Soft blouse, dark skirt, low heels, simple necklace, hair falling neatly to my shoulders, eyes steady. She came up behind me and rested her chin lightly near my shoulder. Do you remember what you looked like the first time you tried this? I smiled, terrified. You still get terrified sometimes. Yeah, I admitted. But now I know terror isn't the same thing as a stop sign. She kissed my cheek. Good answer. I turned toward her. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you help me? Really? She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, because the first time I saw you looking at that dress, I recognized hunger. Not lust. Not curiosity alone. Hunger. The kind that comes from starving a real part of yourself for too long. And I knew if I laughed, you'd bury it for another 10 years. That hit harder than I expected. She touched the silver necklace at my throat. Also, she added, smiling, I was a little fascinated. A little?
Fine.
Completely. I laughed. Then I asked the question that had haunted me from the start. And all those tests, the rules, the pressure, you really had to make it that hard? She gave me that same look she'd had the first day, challenging, merciless, kind.
Yes.
Because I wasn't helping you dress. I was helping you become trustworthy with your own truth. I did not answer right away because there was nothing to add to a sentence that accurate. She kissed me again, slowly, and when we pulled apart, I glanced at the dress hanging in the wardrobe. The pink one, the beginning. I walked over, took it down, and held it against myself. This time I did not see shame in it, or desperation, or fantasy. I saw evidence of fear survived, of effort invested, of a self once hidden and now impossible to unknow. I turned back to her. You know, I said, if someone had told me a year ago that the best thing anyone would ever do for me was refuse to let me be careless with my own longing, I'd have thought they were insane. She laughed softly. And now I think you saved me from becoming a cheap imitation of someone I could have actually been. She stepped closer. And who are you now? I looked at her, then at myself in the mirror, then at the life around me that no longer felt borrowed. I'm someone who stopped waiting for permission. Her smile turned warm in that way that still undoes me every single time. Good, she whispered. That's exactly who I was hoping you'd become. And if you're wondering whether the fear ever disappears completely, the honest answer is no. Not always. Sometimes it still visits me in shop windows and fitting rooms and quiet moments before opening a door. Sometimes I still hear the old voices trying to drag me back into smaller versions of myself. But now I know something they don't. I know what it feels like to stand in the truth and remain standing. I know what it feels like to be seen without being reduced. I know what it feels like to dress not as escape, not as performance, not as apology, but as alignment. I know that the first step is rarely glamorous. It is shaky and private and maybe embarrassing and full of false starts. I know that bad outfits teach you as much as good ones. I know that posture changes mood, skincare changes mirrors, and confidence changes how the whole world reads you. I know that softness can be stronger than fear. I know that being noticed is not the end of the world. I know that the right person will not just tell you you're beautiful, they will teach you how to stop abandoning yourself whenever beauty feels possible. And maybe that is what proving yourself really means. Not proving you can fool strangers. Not proving you can look perfect under certain lighting. Not proving you fit somebody else's idea of femininity. Proving that you can face your own hunger without mocking it. Proving that you can learn instead of rushing. Proving that you can survive being seen. Proving that you can love the version of yourself that once only existed in hidden glances and locked doors. Because the truth is, The night she told me to put on that dress was not the night I became someone else. It was the night I finally stopped running from someone who had been waiting for me all along. And the night she told me to take it off was not rejection. It was the beginning of respect. She made me prove myself. She made me slow down, learn, fail, adjust, breathe, practice, refine, question, risk, and return. She made me understand that femininity deserved more than fantasy, and desire deserved more than shame. She made me face the difference between wanting to look pretty and wanting to live honestly. She made me become patient enough to meet myself properly. And in the end, that was worth more than any easy acceptance could ever have been. Because when she finally looked at me and said, "Now you're ready," she wasn't talking about the dress.
She was talking about me.
And for the first time in my life, I believed her.